Americans were capable of stunts on their own, and a submariner came up with an idea that if you put Army bombers, which had long legs, onto a Navy carrier, you could actually get pretty close to Japan and bomb Japan. Now, the Japanese thought the Pacific would protect them because it's so wide, expansive ocean. And they asked Jimmy Doolittle at the time to find the right airplane. Now, Doolittle was one of the premier pilots in the United States. He's the only guy to fly the GB and survive, essentially. He was one of the first guys, if not the first guy, to get a doctorate in aeronautical engineering. And he was one of the most respected aviators, and so he came up with this airplane here. And this is actually one of my favorite airplanes of the war. North American B-25. It's called the Mitchell. It's still the only weapon in the U.S. arsenal that's named after a human being. Only airplane. Named after General Billy Mitchell, who predicted in the early 1920s the Japanese would attack Pearl Harbor and that they'd do it on a Sunday morning. And Niihau would be involved somehow, which is pretty prescient of him. But anyway, he chose the B-25 because the wingspan is narrow enough to get past the island on a carrier. But one of the critical things is it's on tricycle landing gear. And so the plane is already in a level position as it takes off. It doesn't have to bring the tail up to be able to take off. So you can basically get it in a flying attitude as it goes off the front of the carrier. And if you rev up the engines and put full flaps down and you're already in a flying position, it's just a matter of getting enough speed. And so Doolittle chose this airplane. He really wanted to lead the raid himself, and they finally allowed him to do it. And so today we know it as the Doolittle Raid. In April 1942, on the aircraft carrier Hornet, they loaded up 16 of these birds. They got fairly close to Japan, and the idea was to take off, fly to Japan, bomb Japan, fly over the Sea of Japan, fly over occupied China, and then land in safe China. But they ran into Japanese ships a couple hundred miles short of the takeoff point, so they had to take off right away. They managed to get over Japan, bomb Japan, get over the Sea of Japan, but then because they took off a couple miles short, they were running out of fuel a couple hundred miles short. So a lot of them crashed in occupied China. We have this plane painted as plane number 6. It's the one known as Ruptured Duck and made famous in the book and movie 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, written by Ted Lawson. Lawson essentially crashed on the beach in occupied China. His leg was so mangled that he had to have it amputated at the knee. 2 crews were captured by the Japanese. Several guys were executed for being war criminals for bombing Japan. One crew landed in Russia and was interned. They managed to escape Russia through Turkey about a year later, which has got to be a whole story on its own. But the rest of the guys, some 70-some guys, managed to escape through occupied Japan. Every one of them got away. Even Lawson, who was missing his leg, managed to get away. This so enraged the Japanese, they killed something like 200,000 Chinese in retribution. Now, if you saw 30 Seconds Over Tokyo, or even the terrible movie Pearl Harbor, where they do show the Doolittle Raid, it looks like they blew up half of Japan. Well, they didn't blow up half of Japan. They hit their targets, but they were carrying half a bomb load, and it's only 16 medium bombers. But it was probably the most effective bombing raid in history, because it totally freaked out the Japanese. And the Japanese decided to change their plan for the Pacific War completely, based on this one bomb raid. The Japanese decided to force the Americans to come to a fight in the middle of the Pacific for what they called the Great Mid-Ocean Battle. And then they also decided to invade the islands of Hawaii. And the place to start the invasion of the islands of Hawaii and to force the Americans to come out and fight with their ships was a little atoll called Midway. Doolittle carried no insignia on his cap.